Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's edition of The Wellness Policy. My name is Wai Ting. I'm joined by Goodman and Neal Flanagan, my lovely co-hosts. Every single month, we do one of these things. How are you guys doing?
Great. Neal, we can get to you in a sec. I have so many things to comment on already. So, Wai, you're in a new location.
I moved to the basement.
There's a bass guitar. We typically don't see bass guitars in basements. That's interesting. And then that Lego head, our guest Nick, he has two of them.
Oh, showing me up here.
Wow. Well, so what is this Lego head? You've had this for a while.
Well, Nick, care to explain? By the way, everybody, special guest Nick Schiner returning to the Wellness Policy.
Hey, everybody! Glad to be back. Thanks so much for having me. Does your Lego head have Lego in it?
It does. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It does.
So okay. Mine does too.
It's a container, Jordan.
It's got a sorting sort of device mechanism in it where like you can put Lego in it and you shake it up and it'll sort the pieces according to big, medium, and small sizes.
Oh.
So.
Wow. So is it like a starter kit? Like you buy it and it comes with Lego, or it's no? Neal, you're shaking your head like you understand.
Well, even I know this, Lego. Jordan. This is like 101 stuff, you know.
Okay.
You're showing
he's actually grabbing it.
Wow.
This is the first, everybody.
Nick has hands.
The sheer size of these things.
Okay. Wai, do you have any sense of opinion or perspective on what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's the Bowser head. So I'm assuming a lot of Lego Mario.
Yeah, there was. Who's this guy? Oh, a little one of the Dungeons and Dragons minis.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Mario tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So audio consumers, we're getting a show and tell. And what I didn't know, I will admit, Jordan, is the size of the Lego head, because it's always quite far in the background in Wai's shot. I didn't realize they were as big as they are.
Yeah.
You have a very nice background, Nick. You know,
Thank you.
A lot of, I mean, it's a lot of you, I'm assuming, a lot of your personality.
A lot of my kids, like they take a lot of it off of there, which is fine. Like the Sesame Street, my daughter took down the other day. I had to rebuild, I think it was Bert or Ernie's chair, which is fine. Well, look, I'm all over the way. Hey, there we are.
There we go.
Yeah, so I've got my WrestleMania 40 thing right there, my championship belt.
Yeah.
There we go. This is the actual Dungeons and Dragons Lego set.
Very cool.
Which is super cool. It comes with a campaign also, so you can actually like use the characters, and it like breaks apart, and you can play a full D&D campaign, which is awesome.
Nick, is the red winged feature? Is that Venger from the cartoon series? No.
I don't know.
It's a dragon.
It is a red dragon. I suppose you could say that. Like you're talking about like the old school, like
I'm talking about the old school cartoon that like old people like me remember. Where Venger was the evil guy.
Not named as such. Oh, his mouth just fell off.
And Dungeon Master was actually a character, this little kind of hobbit creature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So for those who don't know, Nick has joined us a year maybe plus ago. We mostly talked about video games last time. So based on what you're hearing us chat about in these first few minutes, that may not be entirely surprising. But Nick is a professional with a capital P, it says on his business card. He kind of exists at the intersections of more traditional academic education and video games or gaming more generally. I assume both digitally and in the real person experience of interfacing with people. So Nick, when you do, and I know you do a decent amount of streaming, you're often featured at conferences and such. Is this your go-to streaming location?
Yeah. Okay. I take basically every meeting I have here, record content here. Just nice little nook in the basement.
So I must ask then, when you are presenting at a professional conference amongst other professionals, maybe some not as into pop culture, we could say, is the wrestling ring with the action figures still that close to?
Yeah. Oh, like if like I'm on a call like this, like if I don't move anything.
Lovely.
I am who I am. I firmly believe that if I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up as me. If I'm at an in-person conference, I don't bring it with me, but like most of the time my clothes demonstrate some of this. So like I've got I think the company's called Roosevelt's. It looks like Results though. They sell WWE shirts, they sell Disney shirts, Star Wars, Marvel, all that stuff. Usually wear those. They're like really comfortable button downs. But they're geeky, and I'm like, this is who I am. Like when I left the classroom, I was like, I need to make sure that I maintain this part of myself. Like this is how I show up for my students. This is how I'm going to show up where I need to be. So yeah, this is what you see. What I think they say in web design, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. That's me.
Well, let me ask, like, what setting would you actually move your background for? Like, if you were about to, I don't know, go like speak to a lawyer.
Nope.
I don't think you would change your.
I wouldn't change it.
Like, what sort of setting would entice somebody to change their background? That's a lot of work.
I would argue I would probably just grab a laptop, and like I have a little bit more of a mobile setup that I can use, but I can't think of an instance that I would be changing my background for who I'm meeting with. The only time I ever really do that is if my kids are home and I need to be upstairs with them. I'll take a call upstairs like that, and won't have this background. But I have never said, oh, I should probably have a different background for the call that I'm about to take. Like, if anything, like this background, I just did at my day job. I just did where we're interviewing for a new position, and I did all the interviews from here. This is who I am. Like, this is the talking point. Can we vibe? These are all things that are important to me. And if this is a reason for you to not engage with me, then so be it. And nobody's told me otherwise. So until I get that message, from leadership, then maybe we have the conversation internally. But no, this is how we do it.
Yeah, I would argue you're probably like what we see here is probably decently curated, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Because it is for me too. There are certain things that I don't want to appear on camera, like mainly like messy things.
Down here,
yeah,
not great.
Right.
But no, I actually like I've got a rotation, so like I have a couple different spots in the basement where I can record things if I want to that have different backgrounds. And I move stuff around all the time. And like I said, these are my kids' Legos. Like if they want them, they come and they take them, and I put something else in that spot. It's never finished. I would say the only constant there are the books, because the kids don't care about those books. And like those are a mix of just books that I've loved throughout my life, and then also just things that I'm currently reading for work. Like I've been reading a lot, just about like online community building. And I just read Superfans by Pat Flynn, which was really good. And like those make their way back here because they're easily accessible and they show nicely and all that good stuff. And have actually there's the 2024 new core rule books for Dungeons and Dragons also. There you go, Neil.
I'm enjoying how we're talking about our backgrounds reflecting our personalities. Mine looks for all the world like the living room of a 74-year-old woman. Because it is, I'm in my mother's house. So yeah, these soft furnishings and the frames.
I think it's hotel chic.
Hotel chic. Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, I'll take that. Jordan has Kermit behind him sometimes, but he likes to switch it up. Your Kermit, the frog portrait, yes. Jordan.
My wife painted that. That's more professional stuff. That's where I do my psychotherapy sessions.
Okay, and your SNL review, I noticed it was there for that.
Oh, well, for John Pollock, I'm typically trying to impress him a bit more. Speaking of Wai, like, will your boss mind having a bass guitar in your shot?
My boss?
John?
Who's my boss? John?
He's trolling. First of all, John, only John gets Kermit, and then he calls him your boss. Why?
No, I don't think he would mind. I don't think he even pays much attention, honestly.
You guys get Beavis and Butthead framed portraits in the.
Yeah, We wanted to have Nick on because it's been a while, but also because while we centered our conversation last time on more so on video games, this time we maybe want to more broadly discuss what else
Just open it up.
you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
mhm.
I'm happy to talk about any of it. But I did want to, like, what happened to the Rockers poster?
Oh, that's right there.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was still somewhere
Yeah,
around.
it's there. It's always there. So okay, Nick, you do a lot. I'm very fascinated, but also not quite entirely sure like what you actually do. So for instance, you're going to, I believe, Southern California later this week to take part in some AI conference. Like
Mhm.
help us understand how an event like that fits into your professional life.
Yeah. So my quote unquote 9 to 5, even though it's something I'm passionate about all the time, is education. I was a former classroom teacher. I taught 4th and 5th grade. I was the technology integration specialist. So I've always been interested in the intersection of technology and education. When I moved into central office for Baltimore County Public Schools, started getting more involved with the maker movement. So hands-on constructivist style learning, like how do we learn through creating things? And that led me to where I work now, which is Digital Promise. I've been here for the last 6.5 years. And all of my work originally around maker learning and still very much has a lot of its roots in it. But now the bulk of my work is really just around peer-to-peer professional learning for educators. Like how do we bring educators, researchers, and industry folks together to learn with and from one another in oftentimes very informal ways? And how do we capture that and share that out with the broader community, with the broader educational ecosystem, and even honestly just with everyday folks, like to better understand what it means to be a teacher in 2025. And right now, it's all things AI. Like everything that everybody is talking about right now is artificial intelligence. And so the presentation that I'm going to be doing later this week is going to, like, it's at the AI K-12 Deeper Learning Summit in Anaheim. And what we're doing is we're basically organizing basically like a playful workshop where educators, folks who are there that are just interested in the topic, are going to get to go through a series of different activities where they're going to get to actually work with one another and how they're using artificial intelligence, and then looking at it through a literacy framework that we have that's like actually having people reflect on their use of it. So do a thing with AI, think about the ethical implications of that, think about the environmental implications for that, think about the pedagogical, like the learning experience. What does this look like? So it's a really great opportunity for folks to really try different tools and see how they see where they might fit in their day-to-day as an education professional, and then have an opportunity to talk about that with others. And I'm seeing AI in education is the worst, and that's I've got a hard disagree there. I think that AI in education is something that we need to spend a lot of time talking about. We need to be really thoughtful about what AI looks like in the classroom and how students are using it. But I actually think that over the course of the last year, roughly, when it's like really become huge and kind of like become really this mainstream thing that you see on the news all the time now, it's actually an invitation for us to really just rethink what education looks like. If I can have AI write an essay and do a really serviceable job of writing that essay, I need to rethink what my assessment looks like. I need to rethink how I'm asking students to demonstrate skills, concepts, knowledge in wholly different ways. And so there are a lot of really great ways that AI can help contribute to that. There's a lot of things that it can contribute to from an administrative standpoint, where you can actually have it do things that streamline your work for you. But then on the flip side of that, and to your point, Jay Infamous, we also have to be very careful with that. We have to make sure that we are not putting student data into a platform that scrapes that data to then inform their training models. So you're absolutely right. There are the tech industry wants us using AI for all of the things. My work is working with educators to say, when should we be using it? How should we be using it? Are we using it effectively? are we using it appropriately? And that's from how are we having students use it, and how are we using it ourselves as professionals? So you're spot on to be pessimistic at best about AI. We should be I would say cautiously optimistic, but it's not going anywhere. Pandora's box is proverbially open. It's not going anywhere. So now we need to best identify how we make sure that we lift up where it does a really great job of things, and we mitigate the risks that go along with it.
Would you like to speak to Jay Infamous?
Yeah.
His name's Jeff. He's decided to call in, and it seems like you guys are already having a bit of a dialogue. So welcome,
Hey,
Jeff,
Jeff.
to the show. Hey,
Jeff, welcome.
What up?
How's it going?
Chilling. So I'm in computer science education.
Awesome.
FYI. I'm a former computer science teacher, former math teacher. I am I'm not loosely associated. I work at Microsoft in education. So a year ago, you said a year ago, perfect timing. A year before that, all we were pushing. So basically what our program does is connect new computer science teachers with industry volunteers, and they volunteer at the school. My program is being terminated at the end of the year. So it was called TEALS. You could easily find it. Mm-hmm. I'm easily identifiable. So I'm not like the J Infamous thing is just, it is what it is. Like somebody doxed me when I played Counter-Strike 20 years ago and called my dad and threatened to like kill him. So I was just like, this is who I am. No. So basically, long story short, is you have Microsoft who's sunk $500 billion into OpenAI and co-owns it right now, or owns 49.99% or whatever it is. You have Google Gemini, you have X's Gronk, you have all these different AIs, and they still hallucinate on a regular basis. So if you're not familiar with the term hallucination, if you ask it to do like what are some studies that it's cited to do this?
Oh,
it
totally.
will just will make them up, like
Absolutely.
legitimately just make up studies and say, this study here proves this. I agree with you about things. Yes, it can write a term paper. Yes, it could do this. They did a study recently where they had 3 groups of students try to learn Fortran for a project. Okay, one group used AI completely. The second group could use AI to assist it, and the third group had to learn by itself. They tested those 3 groups immediately thereafter. The first group that had all AI learned nothing. The second group learned some things, but still didn't do well. And in the last group, clearly, like they gave them a test, a post-assessment for all 3 groups, the same post-assessment. That group did the best. The genie's out of the bottle, yeah, but like the reason why the genie's out of the bottle is because you have companies like Microsoft, like Google, like Amazon, pushing this so hard on everybody that education is just kind of caught up in the middle of this. So you're not like, people are like on their hind leg or hind heels or however you say it. I don't use words. Okay. Like I'm not
hard. I get it, man.
I'm being sarcastic. But I'm really not eloquent. Is that everybody's on their hind legs trying to figure out exactly how to navigate this. And Nick, like, I'm glad that you're having a say at the table, but it's like, it's too late is what I'm getting at. It's like Copilot. You have all these technologies that are already like, the kids know, like my son is using ChatGPT to make a ridiculous amount of money, and he's 19. And he's probably in a better financial place than I am. And he's paying for like the premium version of ChatGPT because he's making so much money in the stock market now that he's just like, he can swing it. It's kind of things like that are like horrifying. But like, he doesn't know what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just telling him what to do.
Jeff, is he using ChatGPT as a financial advisor?
Yes. It's exactly what he's using it for.
I've heard quite a bit about it. And so, Jeff, like you and I think are probably far more aligned than
Probably.
like I'm not here. Like, first of all, I'm here on my own. I first have to absolutely say that, like, everything I say just represents me, who I am as a human being, and why I do it.
I didn't think you were speaking for the greater part of the AI education.
I'm also certainly not speaking on behalf of my employer.
But I'm not either. Like, by the way, but I do not represent Microsoft.
But to your point, I don't want your son. I want your son to be super successful doing what he's doing. I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing that he has figured that out. But I also want him to understand if and when it gives him bad advice, and how it learned that.
Yeah, I think we agree on that thing. I think the big thing is just like I don't think you should be introducing it to students at all. Honestly, like I know people like use the calculator as an example. Like, oh, well, I'm always going to have a calculator. And they turned out they did. But like a lot of people don't, as a former math teacher, a lot of people don't understand math.
Sure. And like I think I wouldn't use a calculator. I would use Google. Honestly, I would use Google as the example, and remembering what that was like, what that time period was like. And I'd argue in a world, if we look at the binary of, do we teach it or do we not? I think there's far greater risk in not introducing AI literacy at an early age, so that they know what they're doing. They know when they're giving their data to. I think we missed the mark on so many things, going back as far as terms of service becoming really, really hard to read and discern. And like, we applaud companies that have like really easy, accessible terms of service to better understand. I mean, nobody is putting AI back in the box. Like, that's why, like, so for me, when I think about it, like, this is personally my perspective, I want my kids to have exposure to it, not because I want it to replace every thought that they have. I want them to understand when it's a tool that might make sense for them to use as a jumping off point. So to your point, and so we actually, like, it's funny, like, have been moving away from using terms like hallucination, because one thing that does is it actually humanizes it, and we don't want to humanize artificial intelligence. It is not a sentient being, and so we actually move away. Hallucination is, first of all, there's also all of the implications of like talking about mental disorder and like. Go ahead, Jordan.
Because I'm ignorant, so help me understand, in what ways is a term like hallucination being used in this context?
So the way it works, basically the way it is when the AI makes things up. So Jeff was mentioning it before. So I wrote a chapter recently about modern fatherhood and the TV show Bluey, and talking about Bandit Healer as like the prototypical dad, and like what media representation of dads has been from like Leave It to Beaver all the way up to Bandit Healer. To help me, I certainly didn't have ChatGPT help me write, but I did ask it for some support in finding resources, research articles related to the topics of media representation, particularly if there was anything around Bluey. I was basically using it as a more aggressive search engine.
An assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Every single article it gave me was made up. The authors were real authors. The journals were real journals. Months, volumes, issue numbers, titles of the journal articles, completely fabricated. Summaries of it, completely fabricated.
What was the red flag?
This is why I think it's so important, because what we need to teach is we need to teach trust but verify.
Yeah.
I can use this as a source. As a media literate adult, which we know not every adult is media literate, some people would take that and would just copy it. Oh, it says this about this. I'm going to put this in my chapter in a book that's going to be published, without thinking about it. I'm like, oh, great. It's saying that I should check out Psychology Today. I don't even know if that's a real one, this article, and I went to go look for it, and it didn't exist. I looked just a Google search. I used Google Scholar then. I then even had folks that I know that work in research in academia that have access to journal repositories that I don't have access to. And they're like, no, this just doesn't exist.
But you were thoughtful enough to double check its work.
So when I talk about AI education, when I talk about wanting people to learn about artificial intelligence, I want them to learn that. I want them to learn that it will straight up lie to you. It will lie to you. And it doesn't, I'm saying lie, it doesn't know that it's lying. Jeff, you know it probably better than anybody in this room. It is literally just predicting it based on the last word that was written and the next word that it thinks it should be.
Yeah. I mean, I could really, we could break down the mathematics of AI if you really want to.
This goes to like, when I talk about AI in education, like I'm talking about like the equivalent of when we taught and still teach safe Google searches, how being media literate, how do you use a tool for a certain thing, but then also make sure that you know how to use that thing. Where does AI fit in as a tool in my repertoire, as a way to potentially help me start thinking about things? But then we're talking about that's all use. The other thing I want us to be talking about is I want us to be talking about the ethical and the environmental considerations. How much power is this using? Should I be using AI versus using a Google search? Should I be using it at all for the thing that I'm using it for? Which platforms should I be using? Is this a platform that scraped copywritten data, copywritten information, like scraped books that people have actual rights to? Or did it only use open source public domain content? These are all things we need to have conversations about.
You know the answer to that. I mean, Microsoft is literally trying to change copyright law in the United States to reflect what it's already done. So it's not like they've already done it. Like Google 20 years ago started scanning every book known to man. And everybody was like, oh, this is great because now we're going to have it. Well, as it turned out, like that fed their AI.
Yep.
Like there's a great article by Sarah Scribbles, who's an artist who in the New York Post New York Times, far more reputable newspaper, who wrote an article about this 3 years ago. And she's like, this is where AI is going. It can almost make my work for me. I mean, the ethical power aside, AI was trained on stolen data. And that's irrefutable. So, and then to address your second point of it being a tool, when you introduce a tool like this to students, even if you tell them it's something they're not supposed to do, I mean, cheating is rampant in education as is, because the ends justify the means to most students. Like just the belief, like understanding that I need to be, in the top 10 to go to this school that I want to go to outweighs the benefit of actually having knowledge. Like I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yep.
So you are having these students write, hey, write me a term paper on this, and it is, I don't know so it's making up things, it's lying or whatever. You're turning this in, your teacher runs it through, a checker. Now they have to have checkers that do AI, but previously it was just like, has this been written before?
Right.
And the answer for that would be no, it hasn't been written before. This is genuine new work, But is it accurate? Is it true? Like those are like the genie's out of the bottle, but we're not even like thinking about how we even got to where the genie was released to begin with, because we have companies that have near infinite wealth that decided this is where we're going to go with the market, even if it's not ready for human consumption, and that's kind of where we're at. And so like I said, everybody's just trying to play catch up to what Microsoft and OpenAI and Amazon and Google are doing, and Facebook trying to get in there. But Facebook and education just have never mixed. So they're always trying to get in on it. That's why they rebranded themselves as Meta, just to try and get into education. But it's never worked. No one trusts them.
So I went to this summit last year actually, and I think the thing that I found most encouraging about it is that the organizers got up there, and even someone, I don't remember who it was, from NVIDIA was there, and the entire conversation was framed around, we need to talk about what's really great and potentially great and exciting about this, but we need to be far more skeptical than anybody else is because of what we hold, right? We can't control that some of these things, we as educators, as people in education, can't control what things have been unleashed on the world in terms of technology and innovation. But what we can do, and I see Jack talking about this as well, is us being able to say, stop. This is an opportunity for us to take stock of what is happening in the world right now. Think about how this fits within the construct of what education looks like in 2025. And then also rethink what education is. Because I'll tell you, even before this became a conversation about AI, like I said, my work was around maker learning before and still very much has a lot to do with it. I think that we've spent a lot of time using the 5-paragraph essay as the way that we ask students to demonstrate their understanding of something. And I think it's hugely important for kids to be able, and adults to be able, to write well and write effectively. But we so often tie their ability to communicate their understanding to that written word. And I'd actually argue that the problem isn't AI being used to generate an essay. It's that the method in which we're asking people to communicate it is you're assessing two things. You're assessing their writing and you're assessing their understanding. And if you want to assess their writing, you should have them take out a sheet of paper and have them write, because there's no way to control for it with a computer in front of them anymore, because they're going to pull up all of those different tools. They're going to do all of those different things. If you want to truly assess their writing, we should have them writing. If you want to assess their understanding of something, I'd actually argue you could do it using AI, because you're going to get far greater results if you know about what you're doing and trying to learn about, and have the AI do, because your prompting needs to be better to get it there. So like I wouldn't sit here and say that coming up with an effective AI prompt should be the way that you assess somebody's understanding of math. That's not what I'm advocating for. But what I'm saying is, we actually should, rather than trying to figure out how we can put controls in place so that we can go back to assessing things through the traditional essay, we should actually be looking at how do we assess student learning in general, and then design it so that AI isn't even a factor in that.
Can I interject for a moment in this?
Yeah.
Because I don't have a background in computing or coding. My professional background is really in, first of all, newspaper reporting and editing, and it's still in sort of the written word in my current role, which is at my regional government, the Northern Ireland Assembly. We've dipped our toes in the water with AI as a tool. This was a lot of it was news to me about prompt engineering and the best way to get the best results and stuff. And we find it very useful in sort of being able to distill incredibly long technical policy documents and the like. But as Nick has said, your sort of check but verify thing is very important. What we have found is the hallucination is a big tripwire. You've got to be so careful that we don't provide politicians with completely fake information. So everything must be checked. But as a means of creating, for example, even the skeleton of a report, the executive summary, the introduction, what should be in which place, and how to organize vast amounts of information into something that's more digestible. I'm personally finding it an incredibly useful tool, as long as Nick says, you understand what it is, because some of the discussion we've had so far, I think, is hard for the average person who's sort of new to AI to even understand. And I think I struggle a little with exactly how a large language model works. What is going on with this thing, that seems like a person talking to me, and it's really not. It's, as Nick said, it's using incredibly sophisticated ways of predicting what the next word should be in a sentence. But even from general knowledge of sort of my younger relatives, there isn't a college student that I know who is not using ChatGPT or Claude or one of these systems to assist them in their learning. So I agree with Nick that the education piece is absolutely missing at the moment, and I think that kids should be because they're going to use it anyway. And the calculator is a good example. Google is a good example. When it first came out, instead of going to the library, I'm old enough to remember that. Google, no,
Pulling out
you
the
go
cards.
go to the school library or go to your local. And we're past all of that now. So I think that kids really need to know how this works, how you prompt it properly, how you look for the mistakes and hallucinations, and the difference between doing your own research and learning and the importance of books and how to write. And as Nick said, giving someone a blank sheet of paper and a pen is sometimes the best way to teach that, because there's no room for AI in that equation. And just say, write me an essay. The ultimate lazy kid who has to submit an essay the next day, write an essay on the 6 wives of Henry VIII, or something like that. It should be 500 words.
I'll get all the wives' names wrong.
Yeah, write it so that it looks like a human has done it. Give it all these weird instructions. That's what's happening, and I think that there's a lot of teachers who are long in the tooth, perhaps, who don't know how to detect it. I personally, and I know I'm going on, so I'm going to stop, but someone who has been an editor for decades at this point, I feel I have a very good eye for spotting AI written material that has not been prompted particularly well. There are a lot of tells. Long dashes, for example, the word delve. I think they're trying to root that out, but it goes in an awful lot. There are certain phrases that ChatGPT in particular will spit out a huge amount. And I think I can tell when, a long email or a piece of writing has been produced, usually by an unsophisticated prompt.
Yeah.
By ChatGPT.
But to your point, you realize you can then, that's where AI literacy comes in. And I also want to name, every concern that Jeff has named is a concern that I share. So there can be agreement, but also I think I don't even think it's divergent. It's so much of what I mean when I talk about AI in education is educating about AI. And so you said, learning how it works, but then also being a good prompter is, so Jack, I see what you're saying in the chat, and actually this comes up on LinkedIn for me all the time. There's someone I follow, Becca Chambers. She posts a lot on LinkedIn, and the Oxford comma comes up. I'm pro Oxford comma, by the way. But M dashes in AI content comes up all the time because people use it a lot for social copy. And the M dash is one of those telltale signs. What a lot of folks don't realize who use AI is that you can then just prompt it to say, if you know that that's a tell, the next prompt should say, remove any instances of M dashes and reformat the text so that it doesn't include them. And it'll do that. And so all of that's to say, there are times where I have taken content that I have written myself, run it through an AI detector, and it reads as AI, all written by me. There are times where I have taken fully AI generated content and run it through those same detectors, and it doesn't get flagged. So the detectors are not foolproof. We are in the wild west of AI right now. Yeah. It's that's
the problem. No, I mean you're not wrong. That's the problem with all of this is that we are in the wild west and we're all trying to figure out the best path and method. I guess I'm just grateful that when Teals closes its doors in June, I'm 99% won't be in education anymore. So I am rapidly trying to find an escape program as quickly as possible. I went to here's an example. I went to a coding boot camp, and I'm graduating in March, although I'm done with all the requirements. And we had to, because AI is so prevalent in development, that we had to show our code and talk through it, understand the methods, what we chose, why we wrote it the way we did. ironically, when I graduated, I had to defend that I didn't do my team's entire project, but I have a minor in computer science. So, and I'm just kind of a different kind of person. I do a lot of things, is the best way to describe me as a human being. But anyway, we had several students who, one student went on a cruise during the first 3 weeks of class and then turned in his assignments and didn't write a single line of any of them. And so they were, they were like, okay, we'll give you one more chance, and then completely went and did it again. So, and so then those people are competing for the same jobs I'm trying to compete for. Like this person has no knowledge of coding or web development or anything like that. And it's like, if this person gets a job and I don't, then I'm infuriated. But like I said, I'm grateful I'm not a teacher anymore. Like I don't have to deal with this.
Hard.
I do have volunteers that do, and teachers that do, that reach out to me and they're like, what do you do? And it's like, I don't know, because if you, as an example, if you go to like Copilot right now and you said, write me a JavaScript program that'll return, that'll sum 1 through 1,000, it'll return it in, 2 seconds, and it'll be 100% accurate. In terms of coding, ChatGPT is probably one of the best coders on the planet. You can absolutely ask it exactly what you need, and it will give you exactly what you need in whatever language you need it in. It's incredible for that. I do. So to make myself look like a complete hypocrite, I have been working on a project and I have been using ChatGPT every now and then. It's like, okay, I don't want to parse this address. You go ahead and do it for me. Give me back the thing to it, so I'm not beating my head against a wall for an hour or something trying to parse it exactly when I know it'll just do it for me now. So yeah, I guess we do need somebody like you who's willing to raise the alarm to make sure that people are aware. I think the bigger concerns that I have is like how we got here. Like I said,
Sure.
that we just mined the internet for,
Yep.
Wai, have you thought about that at some point that there is like an AI version of you out there, and that if I ask ChatGPT to write or speak in your particular style or John's particular style, that it would be able to do it with like probably let's say 85 to 90% accuracy now?
I'm also curious about that. I'd love to meet that version of myself. So like I believe somebody actually has tried to prompt ChatGPT to like do one of our podcasts, or at least like provide a transcript of some sort. And it was just highly amusing. In fact, like I thought about actually like acting one out with John and not telling people and just kind of like seeing what the results are. But like it was at this point at least highly dated. Like it was like us reviewing results from like, I don't know, like a 2019 edition of Raw or something like that, and just completely void of any like real personality, honestly. So it's not there yet, and that's why I find it amusing. Like I find it amusing in sort of like an uncanny valley type of way, where I'm just like, I'm this is curious to me because it's so weird, right? But yeah, like someday maybe we'll get to that 85%. But
that someday is within.
There's not a maybe.
But it's okay. But I don't, like, for me at least, I don't feel threatened by it. Certainly not my line of work, because I feel like so much of my line of work is just like, frankly, it's kind of, it's human, it's like, it's me talking, right? So that I find a bit more like, I don't find as maybe intimidating, but like for somebody who, maybe delivers work like coding, for instance, then of course I could understand those concerns.
It's not so much, I don't think you should be intimidated by it. It's not like people would turn on AI Wai over real Wai. I might personally, no offense, but it's more like write in the style of Stephen King, and then like somebody publishes the book on Amazon under, like think about like Twilight was somebody rewriting 50 Shades of Grey or vice versa. I don't remember which came first, but one was based the fan fiction of the other, and then they cleaned it up a little bit to avoid copyright and then put it out there. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some books on Amazon as an example that are just completely AI written.
There absolutely are.
Sure.
And could be bestsellers within 2 to 3 years,
You're seeing a
That
lot of
kind of-
people, a lot of a lot of the fault, this, and I like Gary Vee, so I'm not gonna throw this isn't Gary Vee's fault, but like there are people that follow that type of content that are absolutely having AI create books on how do you build a 7-figure business, and they're publishing that without really any, and they're selling it. They're not giving it away for free, or if they're giving it away for free, it's the hook to go sign up for the course for the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's where, to go back to the education part of it, we want kids from a very early age to be able to understand this is crap. This is not good.
So what if it's actually good though?
That's the problem.
What if it's actually better than what a human could create?
Then we need to be having we need to be having far broader conversations about just generally how society works. I mean,
but that conversation isn't happening now, and it needs to be happening now, because we're like the AI video of Trump licking Elon's toes is out there, and it's pretty disgusting. First off, but secondly, doesn't look that fake, and that's the problem with it. It's like, we're going to have, AI, somebody's going to put a video of AI Trump or AI Biden or AI Kamala, saying something insane, and it might trigger, World War IV. I think we're in 3 already. So the next one.
He's on, Jeff's on to the next one.
It just means we're going to be skeptical of everything, whether it be real or fake.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And we should be, I mean.
I think critical thinking in general is somewhat underrated as an educational tool,
I think we're going to be overly critical or overly skeptical, which I think many people already are.
Yeah, of course, we're going to be over, but think about your kids. Are they
going to be overly? I'd say the average person will be overly skeptical of ideas that don't jive with their own.
Yeah,
but will lean into things that they will glaze over or gloss over, potentially being as critical about things that reaffirm their perspective.
We have that problem now, and it's just going to perpetuate.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jordan.
Thank you. So Wai's son is a bit young as far as formal education. Nick, I think your kids are at an interesting age. I assuming they're like elementary age, both of them.
My son is in 2nd grade. My daughter's in pre-K. So my son is right in the middle of elementary school.
So certainly your son, I'm assuming he is old enough to perhaps start interacting with some of this. I'm wondering, because I'm ignorant, are there ways in which AI is interfacing with his current education?
Sure. Yeah. So he uses there's a reading program that he uses, and he uses it and he reads, it listens to him, and it's it's powered by AI. And I will tell you, he has had huge gains in his reading. Now, you start peeling that back a little bit. What would I rather have? Well, I'd rather have smaller class sizes. I'd rather a teacher be able to work with him more regularly. Where it's improved his fluency a ton, his comprehension not as much. But it has been an incredible tool from a fluency perspective. Listening to him read a word and saying like, "Oh, you messed this one. Try this one again." Like, I will tell you, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. He is not using it so much as an end user creating things or having the AI create things on his behalf. It is very much he is interacting with it, and it's the next step in like adaptive assessments, where they take an assessment where they get the simpler version of it is you take a test online. You answer the question. If you get it right, it gets a little bit harder. You get it wrong, it gets a little bit easier. Like that's still a very prevalent way of doing assessment throughout the year. This takes it a little bit further and has it is for all intents and purposes smarter. It can do more at one time. It can listen to his cadence. It can listen to his pronunciation. It does ask him comprehension questions. But I've also seen it get things wrong. I've seen it ask questions about parts of the story he hasn't gotten to yet. But the AI is not understanding that. So like
Yeah.
without like it's all the more like it is an amazing tool. It still needs human intervention. And that is where like as far as this will go and as quote unquote good as it will get, you will always hear me advocate for the human element, because what it should be doing is it should be unlocking our ability to focus on higher level things. That's not always the case. It's often not the case. But no, I don't want him just sitting there reading to the AI every day. I want him to read to me. I want us to, because that will even still fall into patterns. It will ask questions in certain ways, and because it's not actually thinking for itself. But all of that being said, has it had a net positive on his education experience? Absolutely. It is helped his reading in such a way that we would have spent a fortune on a tutor or countless hours at a table with me. And we know how kids are doing their homework with their parents. They don't want to do it. Like the amount he likes doing it. He actually asked if he could do the program tonight, and I don't want him doing it on his own, but I do want him doing it.
And I'm wondering, one, if you're just a atypical parent in that sense. And then
I
also,
think there's a lot that probably just put kids in front of it.
sure. So this program, is it designed in ways to help capture his attention? Like, for instance, are they licensing Bluey IP and now it's a Bluey character interacting with him?
This one, no. This one, no. This is all.
But are these things already available?
Oh, I could have ChatGPT right now write a story about Bluey, like, and the character, and I wouldn't have to give it much prompting. Actually, I've been there's a toy, somebody's called Magical Toys. I bought their beta version. It's a stuffed toy that has an AI platform in it, and like I don't really use it with the kids much. I use it, but like you tell a little bit about yourself, but it can tell you a story about Bluey. Like it can ask you, like I tried it with my son. It was like, hey, like I know you like Spider-Man. Tell me, who's your favorite Spider-Man character? Like what's your like? And it's pulling that information from somewhere. It's been trained on that. And go ahead.
Is there any sense of concern about the socialization aspect of your son forming these types of pseudo relationships
Absolutely.
with technology?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you've seen cases of it where people have been have engaged in self-harm and worse after having interfaced with AI platforms. I think it's something that's hugely it's terrifying. Part of my reason for wanting to bring that into my home is so that I could better understand it. I don't turn that on and sit my kids down and have them engage with a stuffed toy for an hour. Like I would never do that. But at the same time, like my 7-year-old, he is autistic, and conversation is hard for him at times. You know, it's funny, like he's been sending me texts from his iPad, and like the questions he's asking me are far better ones than he asks me when we speak to one another. Which is really just fascinating to me and just teaches me so much about how his brain works and what makes him comfortable asking certain things and saying certain things. But there is a real delicate balance there that I'm like, could him talking to this dinosaur be a catalyst for him getting better at conversation? And like that's certainly what they're marketing. They're marketing like, and like again, I don't want my kids doing that without any sort of human intervention. But 10 minutes, tell the dinosaur about your day, see if it asks you questions that are different, but then like holding that up against interfacing with a human. Go talk to the dinosaur for 10 minutes. Now I want you to come talk to me for 10 minutes or vice versa. What was that like versus talking to me? And like, that's how I want my kids to engage with platforms like that and tools and toys like that. Because they have a lot of power. They can do a lot of good, but they can also do a lot of unintentional harm, and they can also do a lot of programmed harm.
I mean, like with a lot of technologies.
Yep.
Right. Think about
Absolutely.
think about our parents' generation and their reaction to just the advent of the internet and our current reliance on it all. I'm sure they had many of the same concerns.
Yeah. I mean, if you even follow it back, and I talk about this with technology a lot, but like think about it. Like there was a point in time where we all printed directions for MapQuest. before you
Well,
had
there's a
like
time before when we actually
that,
used maps.
before that they were actually like printed maps. Before that they were even hand drawn maps. But I do this. I have this conversation with folks all the time about really any technology. Any technology is viewed as kind of like a Pandora's box moment. There was a period of time where the written word was demonized. This is going to ruin the oral tradition. We pass our stories down by word and by listening. We don't write them. And then after that, it was, okay, that's fine. We're going to write, but you got to stick to nonfiction. What do you mean you're writing fictional? You mean women can go in their room and read a fictional story that's going to give them these grand ideas for how they can go out and live their life in a different way? That was considered dangerous. So like we should absolutely be cautious and skeptical of every new technology that comes out, but we should also work to figure out how they fit within society, because we can't put them back in the box. Nobody's going to legislate them to a point where they won't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So we have to educate, and we have to figure out what their role in society is and how we make sure that they are as ethical as they can be.
It's interesting you bring up that distinction between fiction and nonfiction, and how one might be permissible and another isn't. Because I think when we're talking about AI, I feel like if people are warming up to the use of AI, it may be mainly for research purposes, for data mining, for like nonfiction types of things. It's far more controversial when we're talking about AI and its use for art. So I'm kind of curious to hear from all of you guys, especially I imagine almost all of you are have some sort of artistic background. What are your current sort of attitudes towards AI generated art, whether it be still images, music at this point, or video, or really anything that's out there?
Well, I don't think it's there yet, but I mean, I do occasionally see, if you use ChatGPT, I forget the actual name for the section of it that creates imagery. It's very
I think it uses
obvious.
DALL-E.
That's correct.
I think is what it uses.
I think it's easy to spot. Generally speaking, it won't create words correctly and so on. You'll get an extra finger and all these sorts of other weirdnesses. But I mean, it's going to, like the writing side of things, it's going to improve. ChatGPT is stepping up to 4.5 soon, and then there'll be 5 after that. And at some point, they will be able to kind of mine every podcast you've ever done and try to deliver an AI version of you that is much less easy to distinguish. But again, I don't know they'll ever really capture the human element, which is the unpredictability. To lift the curtains slightly. You and I and Jordan had a chat the other day, and you talked about something in the realm of education. Maybe we have time, maybe we don't, to talk about today that you're doing. And I was like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. And I don't know that AI will ever be able to kind of just create that improbability, that sort of that kind of factor.
Because I might be prone to hallucination from time to time. And I don't know if AI will replicate my version of hallucination the same way. So the idea of like AI generated music is very fascinating to me, because I think it actually is very well. Like it's really good. And I ask myself why that is. And I guess it's because the chase towards like music production is so much for perfection. I think often, like we're trying to maybe replicate something we've heard before, or like we're trying to make things sound as crystal clear as possible. And I'm just amazed. Like there are, like I'm sure you guys are aware, like things out there right now that can craft a song. You just kind of type a prompt in, I want this song in the style of Taylor Swift or Daft Punk or whatever, and it'll spit out like something very, very good, including like fully fleshed out sounding production with like lyrics that are actually like, at least like they rhyme and they work, right? So I would argue that it might even be in a farther place than I think we all realize now. Whether or not it can it's just scary, and whether or not it can actually be successful as a mass consumed thing, I mean that's another thing. But I think it'll be a lot more covert in the future. Jordan, do you have any thoughts on being a musician yourself AI generated music?
So for one, I haven't like composed and then recorded and published original music in about 4 or 5 years now. So, and I'm not currently doing it. So that hasn't been a topic of conversation. I think in a sense, it's like the goalposts become moved. So if this is now state-of-the-art technology that people are using, then the artistry might be in part how well are people using the technology. So I think what I lived through as a musician was more so this transition from recording natural tones. So for instance, this is an acoustic drum. I'm going to use a drumstick, and we're going to put an actual microphone at a specific distance and angle from the thing I'm striking, and it's going to record that tone. Now, obviously, it can be processed through preamps and things like that. And the great leap of technology when I was coming of age as a musician was, oh wait, we don't need microphones anymore. We actually don't even need acoustic drums. We can all like just use electronic pads and then pick from whatever tones we want. And then when you strike the thing, it will sound like this. And by the way, we can manipulate even like the timing of it and the intensity of the strike, and then can tweak as much as we want. So I've been in a band where one of the full-length albums we put out had synthetic drums. It wasn't necessarily my preference, but given the dynamics of that project at the time, and certainly taking into account things like budget expense and time as well, it made sense. I'm more traditional in a sense that if I'm going to take the time to create a piece of art, like a recorded piece of music, I would rather do it with acoustic drums and without like quantizing, meaning manipulating like the timing placement of each note, because I want it to feel more human. I want the intentionality and the performance of these, for most, really micro decisions of me playing hitting a snare drum slightly softer and maybe even slightly late for one specific note. Like that communicates something real. And
Mistakes make us human.
But not even doing it by mistake. So for instance, like I may in a drum performance play a specific note slightly late or slightly ahead of the beat, or at a different dynamic, maybe louder or softer for an intended effect. It's part of what I'm trying to communicate either in the storytelling of the music or in the emotionality of the music. And the more that we introduce technological shortcuts, some of that humanity can get stripped out. Now, at the same time, I've never recorded to tape, and I've never had an editor edit using tape because that was entirely too expensive for any project I had been a part of. So my entire history of engaging with recorded music has been using technology to some degree. Totally cool. I personally have very little interest right now in using technology, AI, etc., to assist with the composition of a piece of music. The way I've typically done it is I sit in a room with my bandmates and we jam, we play, and until something inspires us, or someone comes in, here's a chord progression, hey, here's a vocal melody, and we're reacting in real time to that, and hopefully coming to some consensus of this sounds good, this feels good, this works well enough that we can now perhaps perform it in public or document it in recording. But if I was 13 now and interested in being a musician, my assumption is I would be far more interested and open to using, quote, state-of-the-art technology. But at this point, it's very hard for me to relate to that. And also, if I'm knowing that a piece of music was composed entirely by AI or performed in a more synthetic way, again, it's having the benefit of knowing that information. I think I'd be infinitely less interested in experiencing it. That's just me personally. Last thing I'll say, and it's the only time that I've been kind of confronted with, do I leverage AI or not as a professional? I'm a psychotherapist. One of the companies that I work with, we were offered a tool where essentially it listens to the sessions, and based on that, it can do my documentation for me. It can write the progress note. It can write the psychological assessment. I've chosen not to do it, even though those things can be time consuming. And for many therapists, it's the number one complaint of the job. It's just the documentation. I certainly would never use it and then just not like read it over before I submit it to an insurance company or to wherever else it may go. But for me right now, I haven't done enough research, and I'm just not interested enough in understanding like the possible like privacy concerns, especially with something so intimate as a psychotherapy session. It is predicated on a sense of trust and confidentiality and the human connection between two people. I work with a therapist. If she said, hey, would you mind if there was some sort of AI feature that monitored this conversation? Fuck no, I'm not interested in that. And I would feel really bad even proposing that to one of my clients. But apparently this happens every day all the time. So certain people seem comfortable with it. God bless, but at least right now, it's something I'm not even interested in learning more about.
But that right there, that drives home the point that you're right. There's a lot of people who wouldn't know what to ask or what not to ask. So questions like, where is that? Is this a closed or open platform? Are you using this to train the model? How long are the recordings stored for? Where are they recorded and stored? We can't ask these questions unless we know that these are questions to ask. So like that,
I think it's unfair. It's similar to educators. I mean, educators in general are typically like overworked and underpaid.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're asking them to be responsible for making these like weighty decisions about the ethics and the usage of this technology that they don't fully understand.
Yeah. I mean, that's where like solid IT departments and instructional tech. I mean, both from an information technology, but also instructional technology, like really important for them to be asking these questions on behalf of the educator. Yes. But like educators are always having to go through training. It's just part of the job. But I would say like in terms of like teaching AI literacy, that's where like I think that like really looking at computer science education, like pre-K to 12, and making sure that learning about how artificial intelligence works throughout, like making sure that that's spiraled throughout, so that every year kids are learning more about how AI works, how it shows up in their world, both as a user or as someone that it may be using. That's huge. And it looks like Jeff, you wanted to say something as well.
Well, I was scratching my arm, but no, I did. I actually have a master's in educational technology. So like people like me were taught to evaluate technology on a scale like that, Jordan, so like decisions for a district, like the problem with those kind of things is like teachers like me, when I was in the classroom, would immediately go rogue and just implement things I saw right then and there. So if I saw something that was cool, well, we're going to start using this tomorrow kind of thing. Because I like to adapt and I like to change things quickly. So, I don't know, like everybody had like good points to talk about the art thing. Like, obviously, I mean, if I haven't made it clear, like, I just think of AI as some kind of like horrible dragon that's just going to kill me personally, and come to my house and show up, in a dragon form. But no, I don't think, like, it's kind of scary and weird at the same time. Like AI generated art is disappointing. Like I used to mess with Copilot and I would just be like Stone Cold versus Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Like that was, actually the original baseline was Snoop Dogg fighting a chicken. And it was just like horrifying on like how more exact this picture got. And then it was like Sonic the Hedgehog versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it would give me like two different versions. It would give me like the movie Sonic versus like a real looking Stone Cold. And then 2D Sonic versus a 2D Stone Cold, and again, perfect pictures. Like the logo and the WWE logo would be wrong. That'd be it. So I'm not a huge fan. I really like. Yeah, it's just.
And Jeff, I sorry to cut you off. So Instagram stories used to have that feature, the similar feature, and I loved using it. But I'm not a graphic designer. That's not.
Yeah.
It was fun and it was playful. It was amusing.
And that's the problem with AI. It's like a lot of these things are solving problems that you didn't know that everybody wants to be creative at the end of the day. Like everybody, like I have a podcast, I'm not trying to plug it and I'm not going to bring it up, but like I have outlets. I'm a comedian, like I want to be creative. Most people want to be creative, and AI gives people who previously wouldn't have the ability to do these things, the ability to do them. And what's the, the weight is that we took it from people who were genuinely creative and we're passing it along to you, filtered through, machine learning. And it's like, are you really creative at that point with prompt engineering? Like,
but I don't think
it's never
valid.
Stone Cold versus Sonic the Hedgehog for sure.
So my wife is a talented visual artist. She can paint, she can draw, and she makes a living as a graphic and web designer. And she utilizes technology to assist what she does.
Yeah.
I just don't have that visual skill set. But if I have simple enough tools to do basic graphic design, I quite enjoy it and I'm pretty good at it. And so I'm not like, but is my graphic design any less valid than hers because she can draw freehand and I can't? I'm just using the technology in my own ways to be creative.
So
if somebody wants,
go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, Nick. Just ask real quick. If somebody went on stage and was telling jokes and they were AI written and you never knew the difference, would you care? I guess that's my question to you.
Yeah, probably.
Because it would drive me.
Sure.
AI is not funny. Like at the moment, as far as it's gone, if you ask it for some jokes, Christmas cracker jokes, as are better. They're absolutely terrible. So it's got a long way to go in the comedy world. I would say at this point it'll maybe get there, but I think it speaks to its lack of creativity, spontaneity, unpredictability.
But would we say a comedian whose jokes are written for them by someone else, is that any less valid than the performing comedian who wrote their own material?
Yeah, to me personally, absolutely. But that's because I write my own jokes and go on stage and perform them and stuff like that.
Sure.
I would say,
I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
But
you're a human being. Your opinion on this is valid.
It isn't. No. So I was asking. So Jordan, you're in a band. How do you feel about covering a song with your band and your style? Is that like you don't have a problem with that, right?
So the band that I have been in for the last number of years was actually the only time where I've done that. And at most, maybe one song in a 45-minute set would be a cover. But and part of it was, I think, just throughout my life, this sense of pride, let's say, of like, no, we write our own stuff. But again, like, I'm not mad at it. And I'm certainly not mad at any musician who has a team of writers, because if the song is good, the song is good. Now, my relationship may change to the performance or the artist, knowing that it was written for them, and especially if I know they weren't part of the co-writing process, then it's just a different lens through which I experience the recorded piece of music or the performed piece of music. If I know this is someone's words and someone's composition, it might strike me in a different way. But again, if someone is singing a cover song, performing a cover song, I don't think the expression of that performance is any less valid.
No.
I think it's a difference.
I Will Always Love You as a cover.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, Elvis only wrote one song, so I mean, nobody knows what song that was. So I think comedy is just such a different animal in terms of what we expect from our comedians and what we expect from, like, Kevin Hart puts out a 1 hour performance a year, and it's near impossible. Like, to be in movies, so you're on set 3 or 4 times a year, you're touring, you're putting out an hour of completely new material. Like, it's impossible, you know. And I know people who have written, like, the roast of Tom Brady, Nikki Glazer's from St. Louis, and blew up, and so she's now like a household name. Like, I know people who helped her, like, personally know people who wrote some of those jokes. I think that's a different scenario, but, like, maybe she's taking some of those, like, some of that work on tour. You know, I know the ins and outs, because I know I know one person on NDA, so I shouldn't even know they're on an NDA, but they're on an NDA. So, you know, like, and she's like a touring comedian. So it's like, how many other
being a very funny person and writing are two different things. And I think that SNL 50 sort of brought this home to me. And I've known this for a while about one of my favorite people who makes me laugh the most is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but she does not ever refer to herself as a comedian. She's a talented actress, and particularly a very good comic actress. Her delivery is brilliant all the way through, from Seinfeld, when I first sort of saw her on screen, through Veep, to her skits stuff on SNL and stuff. But that is all written for her. But she's still one of the funniest people I on screen, to my mind.
Yeah, that's acting versus, like, a performance. You know, like, if you had told me Larry David wasn't writing Curb Your Enthusiasm, I would have a problem with that. Like, you know, if he wasn't hands-on about it. I'm sure, you know, he's not writing every single episode per se, but, like, there is a lot of improvisation in there. But they're, like, the finer points. Or Seinfeld, you know, he said, I never wrote, like, no one ever wrote his lines on Seinfeld. You know, like, that as an example. Yeah, no, comedian like Will Ferrell is a comedic actor, I guess would be the best way to describe it. You know, and I don't hold him accountable for him saying other people's words, even though he does do a lot of improv when they're filming, like, Talladega Nights. The outtakes on that were almost as funny as what was in Talladega Nights, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Certain genres value that form of authenticity more than others. You know, like hip hop, I think, is a very interesting example where, like Drake, you know, ghostwriter, right? Heavily criticized for having a team of ghostwriters. Whereas if Drake was, you know, I don't know, like BTS or something, like, I mean, they kind of pride themselves on just having, like, a great team of, like, very talented, you know, writers that are writing for these performers who are excellent at live performance and just, you know, everything else but the writing perhaps itself. I don't know that about BTS or not. I actually don't know whether or not they write their own stuff.
I don't.
And I think maybe a unifying point here might be about how well informed are we as a public about any of these things that we're consuming. Does it matter to us? Does it change our experience with a song to know how it was constructed, who wrote it, who performed it, how was technology leveraged? Obviously, in a much more weighted sense, when we're talking about how technology interacts with our experiences of education, perhaps of government, with healthcare services. There are different, it's just, to me, that carries more weight than our experience of entertainment, let's say. But I think a unifying point is about the ways in which we are well informed or not about what the thing is, how it came to be, how it's being distributed or amplified toward us. Is that cat AI, Jeff?
Yes, this is Sniper Cat of the future.
Oh wow.
So she got tired of listening to the conversation and not being on the desk. So she's whining.
So if I may, Wai, as we round this up, Wai, do you feel like we've solved AI today?
Yeah, I mean, we maybe we're maybe 0.0001% further than we were when we started.
Wai,
so
I'm determined to get this in today because I really want to. Like, here's an awkward pivot. AI is, I imagine, is difficult in teaching us how to do things that are in 3 dimensions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it?
Have you had
Really?
any life experiences lately where you're learning stuff that perhaps, ChatGPT wouldn't be able to, you need to actually do it to understand it?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, I've currently lately enrolled in an adult learning course for just learning about auto mechanic basics, and it's just from a sort of personal desire to not want to get ripped off. If I'm going to the mechanic and they're speaking a completely different language. Thank you very much, Jeff, for joining us. By the way, check out his podcast, "Give Me a Song," on YouTube. He won't plug it, but I will go ahead. He asks his guests to pick a song, and they talk about the song for the entire episode. So it's a very great idea and very funny as well. So thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so I just kind of decided to. I realized like my car's getting a bit older, and I want to be able to take care of it myself. I mean, like it's one of the biggest purchases I think somebody will ever make, and usually if I buy something, I like to at least know a little bit about the manual just to know how to like maintain its life. And I realized like with my car, I never really did that. And it's not even like reading the manual is enough sometimes, because there's so many things, that I think you have to know. So I just kind of had enough of like not knowing, and I kind of developed a curiosity myself and just kind of looked up a local course, and I've been doing that once a week. So yeah.
I'll give you a standing ovation.
This is originally, I think, part of the idea that we were going to discuss on this particular podcast because, of course, of Nick's background as an educator. And we could still talk a little bit about that,
we can. That's an easy segue. Like, at the end of the day, human curiosity is what's going to trump everything. Like, you can go to ChatGPT and you can ask all those questions. But, like, you want to learn from somebody who's done it. Like, at the end of it, and this I'm going to tie it all together really neatly for you. Like, there's a reason why there's things like NDAs, or like we don't want to know if Jimmy Fallon writes his own jokes, or if there's like we know there's a team of writers, but we don't talk about, oh man, the writers on the Tonight Show were so funny last night. Like we say Jimmy Fallon, like part of that is that illusion. Like we could probably play a
same with wrestling.
Yeah, I was just saying, like we could play AI or Ricochet. I don't know
who's really coming up with these
right.
scissor stunts.
Right. Huh? So all of it, like at the end of the day, like we crave humanity. Humans crave humanity. Humans crave knowledge, and AI is a tool, just like any tool that's come before it and things that will come after it. And it's very scary. But at the end of the day, like I hear stories all the time of people saying like, I was really interested in this thing, and now I'm taking a course on it, or I'm reading more about it. Like I said, like I've been really interested in like what makes a piece of content really popular on a social media platform. Like how does the algorithm work? But really like on a human level, what resonates with people? Because that algorithm is still very much rooted in behaviors. An algorithm on any social platform, like they talk about, like I was reading about this morning, like it's not necessarily percentage of watch time. Like people talk about percentage of watch time and like when the drop off is. Some platforms prioritize that. Some prioritize just straight up seconds watched. How many seconds have you watched? So that platform is going to tell you, don't worry so much about how long your content is. Make the content as long as it needs to be to capture the audience's attention, tell an effective story, and do what it's supposed to do. Versus somewhere it's like, no, like they want to see the percentage of it. And like, you've got to have something that drags people along and keeps them watching to the end. And so like, but that's all human. It's a computer making decisions on it and what gets pushed and what doesn't. But like, those are storytelling hooks that are as old as time. And the best way to learn about them is to learn about people. So like, we are moving in, like we have been moving for thousands of years. Like this, it's this symbiotic relationship with the technology that we have in our lives. It's constantly informing how we act as humans, and humans are constantly impacting how the technology gets developed.
And it speaks, Nick, I think, to the other another area that you're steeped in, which is gaming. And I think gamifying learning, is something that, learning's kind of a game anyway, because we get our wins. And I'm sure that you've already, got a sense of achievement, sort of a leveling up, as in that sort of sense. in the car mechanic thing, I know that like I'm trying my best to resurrect my school Spanish, which used to be halfway decent, and I've just lost. But Duolingo is basically a game, but it's a good way to sort of refresh and learn the vocab and the grammar for a foreign language. So these things are, I think that curiosity that we all have somewhere for lifelong learning, whatever it is, it could be, and whatever the motivation for it is, whether it's to save some money on car mechanics or plumbers, or just for the curiosity of it, or so that I can speak to a local when I go on holiday. Yeah. Those sorts of things.
The process of learning as an adult is somewhat, at least formally, is kind of novel to me. I haven't been in school in over a decade. So I'm actually quite enjoying it because I'm going in with a specific purpose. I'm not going because I have to go, because somebody's making me, because I'm there because I have to fulfill this requirement to earn this piece of paper to do all this. I'm choosing to go, and it's sort of like a different energy about it. I'm a lot more. I value class more so than feel it's an obligation.
Well, and so there's a reason, like we talk about pedagogy. That's like the study of the science of kids learning. There's andragogy, there's adult learning theory, and because adults are very different than kids, and there's a lot of overlap, and each of those has a ton that they can learn from the other. We should be making learning for kids more intrinsically driven. Like, I want to learn about this thing. There are always going to be things that we need kids, like we need people to learn and understand whether or not that's a thing that they want to. But past a certain point of basic competence, the world, there's really a million and one different directions that you can go in terms of what you want to learn.
So the younger kids are, the more music and melody is infused in the education. Is this correct, Nick?
I'm finding that myself. Yeah.
But it should be.
No. I'm saying actually that is the case. Yes.
It depends on where you go.
Okay.
I'd say a lot of school has become very rote. And it is very much like, you learn these things, here's how you apply them, you do them. There are lots of schools that exist like that. And then there are other schools that exist that say, like, it's more about being in the world. And like, you learn these things because now you need to learn this thing. And you become naturally interested in this. And like, you might learn mathematics because you're really interested in botany and like the measurement of like, how do you measure the plants and track them? And how do you make sure that you're giving them enough water? Like, are you measuring that appropriately? So you bring all of those skills, and like, that's where the best, in my opinion, the best learning happens. It's like where your interests and the skills and concepts you need to learn because the state or federal government says that those are the things that you learn. I think that the closer you get to tying a learner's interests to what has been deemed necessary for them to learn, the better your outcomes are going to be. But not every learning place does that. Sometimes it is literally just, I need you to memorize these multiplication facts because you're going to take a multiplication test and you're going to answer these questions and see how fast you can do them. And there's value in that, but like it's not necessarily going to stick. Like there's a level of stickiness that like when you care about something, you're much more willing to go further for it and commit yourself to it more.
Well, what a tough challenge to try to get a class of 30 children all to be interested in one thing. It's really like, my child right now, actually part of my interest in cars is because my child is my 2.5-year-old loves cars, and it's just kind of gotten me into it that much more. So I can actually, like, if I want to teach him numbers, for instance, I can at least try to use cars. For instance, like I could teach him letters by like he knows brands, he knows Audis, like just by looking at the circular logos. He can point. He's learning the letters VW from the car manufacturer more so than just the alphabet. So I could tailor his education through his interests. But imagine trying to do that with a class of 30.
It's why I go back to class sizes, and like class sizes are such. It's hard for 15 kids, let alone 30. Yeah. It is a place where AI can be helpful. It like from a teaching perspective, to be able to say like, I have students who are interested in this, and this. Can you give me some suggestions for how I could map this academic concept to these topics that my students are interested in? I'd also argue you got to ask the kids.
Wait, how many people are in your auto mechanic class?
Depending on the week, I'd say about like 12 people. Like it's a very small allotment of people that are allowed. They in fact they call it like the Taylor Swift tickets of adult learning courses in that particular
Oh.
school. So
Oh,
Yeah.
so how'd you get in? You know someone?
I had to wake up early
You
to
bought it on
line up.
StubHub.
Well, I had to have two machine, like a laptop and a cell phone, and I was like up right when the enrollment date began. I signed
Wow.
up.
Did you have like first day of school jitters?
No, not really. Again, there's no pressure.
This is
And-
Wai
You
Ting.
want to learn it.
Yeah. I was excited. Like jitters in maybe a good sense. Yeah, I suppose maybe.
Right.
Did you strut in Wai and they all went, it's way from the law and
Do
post
they,
wrestling.
is it distracting for them having you in there?
Mm.
I was more distracted by or starstruck by the fact that my teacher is a mechanic at the Honda dealership near my house, meaning I might actually know somebody who works at the local dealership now. So
It's all who you know.
That's cool.
that's it. Nick, thank you so much for offering
Yeah.
your time and your insight
Of course.
on a variety of topics. But I certainly learned something through a human being here, and didn't require AI to teach me
That's right.
something today. So, Nick, the floor is yours. Anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, you know, I didn't know this is where the conversation was going to go today, but like I think it's a really important one. I think we are literally sitting, I shouldn't say sitting, like we are running at an intersection right now, and it's a hugely important conversation that really touches upon every facet of our lives. And like I happen to work in education. Education is also one of those things that really just has a ripple effect on the entirety of society. So to get to be able to talk about these things and like answer questions and like poke holes in things, like I'm just appreciative of the fact that there are so many people willing to say, let's stop, let's look at this, let's think about it. What is the good? What is the bad? What is the ugly? And that is, I actually think, far better than how we've approached other technology innovations, particularly in education in the past. Like I think that we're seeing a lot of people jump to it, but I'm just really thankful that I get to be in a space with so many people that are asking really good questions, because I think like even the music example that you were giving, where's the line? Is an electronic drum beat less valuable than one that you've recorded at a specific distance? Is that what actually happened to record it in the first place? What is our line? Where do we say that this is no longer a human creation? I think these are all questions that are really worth us asking and figuring out how this technology fits into our everyday lives. So it's like I said, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about today. Like it could have been all wrestling. It could have been all games. I'm glad that we had time to talk this though. This is really cool.
Thank you, Nick.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Neil, for joining us. Let's continue the conversation either in the Discord or in the forum.postwrestling.com. It is free to sign up to both of those things. Postwrestling.com/Discord. We have a wellness policy channel in there, and if you'd like to carry on the conversation, join us there. We'll be back at some point next month, and topic to be determined. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.